All right, well, good afternoon. This is Cameron Nixon, and it is September 24th, 2019, just after 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're looking at a potentially significant severe weather event across the Midwest and Upper Midwest. So I figured we could discuss this a little bit. Right now, currently, we do have convective initiation across extreme northeast Nebraska into Iowa. And what's rather interesting is that this is prefrontal. The cold front is most obviously right here, and this is ahead of that front. So, as I'll discuss a little bit later, this is changing some of the earlier impressions that I had of this event and could end up making it a little bit more potent. And as you move down into Kansas, we do have kind of a dry line um, feature eventually intersecting with this cold front as it becomes more weakly forced. And we already have convection ongoing across here. So let's take a look at what is driving some of our severe weather chances. We got an upper level jet, as always, hopefully. And nosing into the region, we generally have a very fast westerly flow, even becoming perhaps a little bit northwest as you move into Nebraska. So, what this is generally going to mean, especially in the US, regardless of your low level flow, this is just going to create some pretty long mid level photographs, which is going to be good for rather swift organization of convective towers into supercells. And after that, maintain them for pretty long periods of time. So let's take a look also at our mid-level Vortmax, which is currently dipping into um, mainly the Minnesota area. So what I'm just seeing with this is that our synoptic forcing is generally confined to the Minnesota, Western Wisconsin target. However, what I find actually pretty interesting is that your cold front changes character a little bit between this area and the farther south area. Whereas if we did have strong synoptic forcing and strong low level forcing, we may end up having concerns with convection becoming linear too quickly or becoming QLCS. You actually see in the region of strongest synoptic forcing, we actually have the weakest low level forcing, very diffuse cold front and weak surface convergence along it. However, where we had weaker upper level forcing, we have stronger low level forcing in the form of a sharper temp gradient and convergence across that cold front. So what I'm actually wondering is if this like system of checks and balances, if you will, ends up basically just allowing just semi-discrete convection to occur across this entire line without much concern for bowing segments and lines. So things like this make me think that, well, there might be supercells across a fairly large area. And you can see the dryline bulge down here, which could support a couple supercells as well. So, mid-level temperatures, contrast that with some pretty hefty theta E signatures, are actually quite low. We're dipping into the 7-degree range across especially the northern outlook area. So what this is going to do is allow you to have a lot steeper lapse rates, which will readily support updraft growth and hail growth and low stretching. So take a look at our low-level wind field, and what I've noted is that you generally have a stronger response, especially in the southeastern Minnesota, western Wisconsin area, into northern Iowa, and this generally backs off as you go south. So whereas this pretty much entire region is going to be good or conducive for supercell development, I believe your tornado threat will especially be heightened in this general area. Um, this combination of upper level shear and low level shear, without even looking at photographs, just seems fairly conducive for some pretty robust supercells and tornadoes. So let's check out um, What I really think changed in my eyes after seeing this evolve throughout the day is that you do have prefrontal forcing. And what I was getting worried about is last night and this morning looking at cam runs, and I'll do a disclaimer is that I do not like inserting cam runs into weather discussions, but I figured this proved my point a little bit. Um, is that some of these runs had a very strong signal for left movers. And you can get that with how strong a mid level shear we have. I've noticed, even regardless of how big your level hodograph is sometimes. So, what was going on in some of these cams is that it would only initiate along the cold front. And if it popped a left move or two, that left move or two ended up just growing upscale, creating its flanking line, and just eradicating half the risk area. And I've seen this happen before, so I didn't think this was out to lunch. Um, but it, if you have a couple left movers go through, uh, that basically wipes out your instability source and just prevents anything else from happening there besides a little bit of hail. So you generally do not want that if you're forecasting a 10%, 10 hash risk of tornadoes. So what's shifted is that generally as you move into warm sectors, your low level photographs are going to get bigger. Just as you become more deep into that low level kind of advective flow. So I was seeing some signature for at least weaker low level photographs near this front becoming larger as you moved east, which makes sense. Um, but these convective towers are now birthing themselves into very large low level photographs as well as that upper level shear. So I don't really see a reason why you'd get much left mover development ahead of this line. And this could make all the difference in making this event go from a demolition derby of right and left movers and a few fairly productive right movers. And you can see already there's signatures of level instability, these kind of cloud bands, these cumulus feeding into this general area. A little bit of void here, but again, as you move into eastern Iowa. And what was interesting is that I could see this represented in low level cave values from REP for what that's worth. So, the most interesting area of interest in my eyes is southeastern Minnesota and Wisconsin. And this is largely a factor of you've been having cloud cover throughout the day in that general area, and that's allowing your low level wind fields to stay backed while you are still ushering in. There's a 70 dew point, another 70. So this is kind of the classical area for you're going to get your highest level of instability and your highest level of shear. Will that matter? Will this area still be conducive for tornadoes? Yes, I really believe so, especially because of those strong supercell dynamics. Your photographs just get that much larger and could make for a potentially even more robust threat up here. I actually got a current photograph pulled up from Tim Sapini's page. Check this out if you're looking for real-time feedback. But here is a very large looping photograph in the low levels. You got some weird backing going on in the mid levels, but I don't see this as much of a deterrence for supercell longevity. And your mean wind motion that he plotted right here is well within this loop, uh, giving it access to fully streamwise vorticity throughout a pretty deep layer. So again, I think right movers will rather quickly develop in this and become severe, posing a threat for large hail and tornadoes, potentially significant. If I could pull up a couple soundings to kind of back this claim, and this is even in the lesser amped up, if you will, outlook area. Uh, Pretty decent photographs. You see that long mid-level flow as well as that long low-level flow. And what's really a factor in this is these steep level lapse rates, uh, handing off to some pretty high values of low-level cape. If you move into the hot seat for where I'm guessing the most active weather will occur, is some little bit of funkiness in the photographs, but generally, again, still very long. Your low level photograph is extended a little bit, even more humped as it was farther down south and less conducive for anything but right movers, while still maintaining those pretty decent lapse rates. And as you move down into the Nebraska target, uh, let's take a look at this because I'm a little bit less familiar. Uh, yeah, your upper level shear slackens just slightly, but you still have that low level shear that is conducive for tornadoes and those low level lapse rates. So generally, your lapse rates are and your thermal profiles are of no concern over pretty much this entire area, except for near the dryland target near Kansas. I was looking at this as a potential target for some pretty robust supercells, and there's some currently ongoing right now. Only issue is that you are a little bit higher base, a little bit higher level of free convection in the sounding for what that's worth. However, your photographs are very large in the low levels, so I'm assuming this could yield a highly deviant supercell or two if they were to hold off a little bit. There's stuff currently ongoing down there right now, but if we had any subsequent convection later on, that could pose a risk for some large hail, possibly a tornado. So yeah, let's watch how this unfolds. Should be an interesting night. Thanks for watching. As always, if you found this useful or want to continue the discussion, let me know and have a great afternoon.